Day 746 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 424,000 military personnel losses, which is just shy of a staggering 425k figure. Then as for hardware losses, 8 tanks, 24 APVs and 33 artillery. And once again, no shortage of non-armoured military vehicles, standing at a whopping 74 today. Then we'll head over to the map and start out in Russia today, as there was a drone attack which prompted the halting of operations at the Pulkovo International Airport in St. Petersburg. Russian state news announced the interception of the drone just south of the airport. However, a fire erupted in a hangar close to the airport, affecting a 1,000 square meter area. As current, it's not possible to determine if the hangar was the intended target, with no official word provided from Ukraine as yet. But given the previous incidents of a similar nature, there's a fair chance that the hangar was the intended target, like so many other cases. Then moving a bit further south, as in a similar spirit, a Ukrainian drone was shot down, leading to a fire at an oil depot in the Kursk Oblast, as stated by the region's governor. And the exact same logic would appear apparent in this episode, as the regional governor also stated that the drone was intercepted, then fell, then ignited at the oil depot, as a result of which a 3,000-ton tank was damaged. And remember, these are the words of the Russian officials, not mine. Also, locals stated the blaze was visible from miles away. So here we have it again, the luckiest drones in the universe intercepted, but their debris fluking a chance shot at one of the very targets that they seek to reach in their terminal phase. So they really will concede nothing at all. Then into the Ukrainian map today, into the northeast and near to Kupiansk, as the grounds continue to dry and Ukrainian troops stand ready for a potential new large-scale Russian offensive. And sources on the ground, including a Ukrainian infantryman, believe that Russia will consolidate its forces for a breakthrough in the Kupiansk direction soon. Then closer to the front lines in this direction, the situation remains pretty tense, as it's been noted that the Ukrainian forces observed Russian efforts to probe for vulnerabilities, with a number of isolated but intense clashes occurring around Sinkivka and Tabaivka. And it's interesting because this northeastern pocket is where you see more of the, less aged Soviet equipment deployed on the front lines from the Russian forces, including that of the T-80 and T-90 tanks. In fact, the further away you get from this point in the north, the less and less you see the better Russian equipment like these. And so Russian locations like Volodya, Zaporizhia, and Kherson know this fact of life very well. Then headed a bit south to Ivaniska, as the battle for this town is very much still ongoing, with geolocated footage showing that the Russian forces are making some small gains into the town further. But we may gain a better understanding of things here by looking at the Avdiivka axis further below, as the situation has somewhat stabilized, with an officer of the 59th Brigade confirming that the ammunition has indeed arrived and supporting their efforts now. But all in the meanwhile, having Ukraine leaning into a defensive posture as they are rapidly bolstering frontline positions and cementing their fortifications, with this strategy aiming to curb Russia's advance and limit their conventional tactics. Sort of a head-first approach, all in the name of reimposing a new-found attritional meatwave grinding posture like we've seen before. Though it is difficult to say if that will happen, we'll see a lot of activity like that as where the current lines are drawn, or just beyond that massive network of river bodies. Then, about 30 odd kilometers northwest of here, Russia launched S-300 missiles at Monohrad, still within the Donetsk Oblast, and in typical fashion, we saw damage to a 9-story residential building with 27 cars damaged in the process. And the truly reprehensible nature of the Russian military using older and imprecise missiles, which are otherwise primarily designed to defend against aerial threats, as opposed to attacking land targets, constitutes a blatant disregard for even the most basic accepted norms in armed conflict, with the misuse of their own military assets. But of course, they deny it, or officially state it back up the chain as a high value military target. You really can't argue with this type of mindset. It only responds to strength. Then moving along, as somewhere in the east, a Ukrainian sniper has successfully taken down a Zala UAV that was scouting the area. The downed UAV is now a valuable asset for the Special Operations Forces and will undergo detailed analysis by experts. Then also we saw the total destruction of a Russian Buk M1 air defense system. So these are surface-to-air missile systems that include both the radar and launcher components integrated into a single vehicle unit. And fairly pricey at about 15 to 20 million US dollars a piece. Then also we saw the now rare destruction of a Russian TS4 Tulpan 240mm self-propelled heavy mortar, which is just as well because these are primarily used for a number of purposes, including for the destruction of fortified targets with the use of those utterly massive 240mm mortar rounds. Then, somewhere also in eastern Ukraine, a Baba Yaga heavy drone from the 28th Mechanized Brigade dropped a TM-62 anti-tank landmine on the hood of a Russian Tiger IMV, which is a infantry mobility vehicle. And you don't see many of these in the field either. And on this topic, something to note here. So I've noticed a lot of renewed Ukrainian activity recently for use of the Baba Yaga heavy drones, and in particular, dropping anti-tank landmines onto nearby frontline targets, which is quite the innovative approach, combining the new and the old. Plus, Ukraine will probably never run out of these anti-tank mines, with lots to spare. Not to mention they do certainly pack quite the punch. Then, lastly of importance, in the east, we saw a destroyed Russian T-80 BVM variant of a tank, which is a 2022 upgraded variant that was a previously undocumented loss from just a couple of days ago. And this one's relevant because, in some respects, these are actually better than the T-90 tanks. Now, apart from the fact that the T-90 is based on the T-72 and was almost named a T-72 BV, this T-80 BVM, by contrast, is equipped with a more powerful 125mm cannon that most T-90s don't have, and has better protection and a better engine too. So, in reality, we might be looking at here one of the best tanks Russia actually has to offer in this war. Right there, disengaged. Then briefly to the central south, as Russian kamikaze drones struck 2 energy substations in southern and central Ukraine, that is to say Zaporizhia. Now, despite the attacks, electricity supply to consumers remained uninterrupted during the repairs. And it must be said that Ukraine has become exceedingly efficient at repairing or even replacing their electrical or energy infrastructure, and if the shoe were on the other foot, which may happen to Russia at some point in the future, I would have my concerns for Russia's ability to act and respond and repair quickly. Because Russia has, time after time, again just illustrated their inability, particularly in the winter months, to fix an issue like this weeks or even months behind schedule, let alone doing it in as little as 6 to 12 hours. It's quite shocking, really, and almost like Russia is living in this one great big glass house. Then, moving further south, as recent sources suggested that the Russian army is relocating their repair facilities from occupied Crimea to Russia. According to the Atesh partisans that are documenting these movements. And so these types of Russian actions are in response to Ukrainian defense forces and their successful attacks on military targets within Crimea in recent times, that are only just amping up at this point. As such, many observers suggest that this seemingly forced movement and rerouting of services only works to hamper Russian logistics and repair timeframes for their army. Then, moving to the west, as a Shahed drone strike has damaged an industrial site in the Odessa region. And the drone, carrying a 50-kilogram warhead, appeared to have less impact than what might have been expected. Then to some naval updates, because following the sinking of the Russian vessel, the Sergei Kotov, from almost a week ago now, this has led to a notable 6-day gap or absence in Russian naval presence in the Black Sea that it's been observed. And so Ukrainian Navy spokesman Dmytro Platenchuk pointed out this hiatus, implying a possible setback in Russia's maritime activities within the area. Or in other words, the Russian Black Sea Fleet Command could be twiddling their thumbs, thinking about new defensive solutions to their growing incoming attack vector problems. Then moving across to just a very short bit of news today. So starting off with this one. So the film 20 Days in Mariupol won the 2024 Oscar for Best Documentary Film. And so this documentary actually provides a harrowing account of the early days of the Russian invasion of Mariupol in Ukraine's southeast. It was also directed by an AP journalist who was on the ground with his team during the siege, where the film captures the devastating human toll and the resilience of the city's inhabitants amid relentless bombardments and destruction. And through this first-hand footage, if you will, and narratives, it sheds light on the impact of war on civilians and showcases the despair, but also the courage of those trapped in the conflict. And I would indeed recommend giving that one a watch, yeah. Then moving across to a couple of quick funnies to round it all off for today, guys. So the first one, not precisely funny, except from a larger, more objective viewpoint. So here we have Russian servicemen riding on a forever immortalized Buhanka Scooby-Doo van, and in fact drove over a mine live on camera in the Kherson Oblast. Now these guys ended up being okay as it appeared, but miraculously I might say. But as always, you've got your classic blyats or blats and other various expletives. And so the van was destroyed, unsalvageable. Then someone goes to ask if they can use the radio. But apart from the radio physically being destroyed from the accident, as even before that, one of the guys mentioned how it was already inoperable and long since dead, and supplied faulty without a charge, or maybe even an old exhausted battery. So anything but a few key components for the Russian army, which it really comprises of mostly just manpower and artillery, and the Buhanka vans. But I'm also quite very sure that when a Ukrainian UAV spots Russian manpower in a Buhanka van, then that's conceivably almost like a 2-for-1 discount right there. Then moving across to a final funny to round it all off today, guys. So there was a large demonstration in support of Putin that took place in Chechnya recently as part of his upcoming re-election. However, all is not as it appears, as multiple Russian Telegram channels wrote that government-funded employees and students were told its attendance was mandatory. So that, plus the attendees were clearly not interested in keeping the supplied flags for the next mandatory demonstrations. The Russian fakery continues. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like and comment. I do appreciate it all, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.